The morning Arya's she-wolf threw her at Alpha King Theron, Arya was carrying 40 pounds of ledgers and an uncovered bowl of gravy. Theron caught her without looking up, although the gravy achieved what 3 invading armies had failed to do. It conquered his left sleeve. Nobody in the council chamber moved. Arya lay across the king's lap with one arm around his neck. 3 ledgers had landed beneath the table. A 4th rested open on the chancellor's head, while a ribbon of brown gravy slid down Theron's black coat. His quill continued across the page. "The Western Bridge receives 12 new beams," he ordered, still reading the report. "The mill receives 6 carts of coal, and somebody removes this bowl from my elbow." Beta Bram Tolland lifted the bowl with great care. He had served beside the king through border fights, avalanches, and one diplomatic banquet involving poisoned peers. None of those experiences had prepared him for an Omega who arrived through the air. Arya's face burned hotter than the council brazier. Inside her, the newly awakened she-wolf settled against Theron's chest with a pleased sigh. There, warm, safe, cedar. The wolf had no interest in bridges. She considered public finance a human illness and Theron the cure. Arya tried to stand, but the king's arm remained secure around her waist. 3 breaths, Theron reminded her. His deep voice stayed perfectly formal. His amber eyes did not. They held the quiet amusement of a man who had become far too comfortable catching his temporary accounts clerk. Arya counted quickly. Theron breathed with suspicious slowness. "That was 1 breath," she muttered. "Royal lungs are larger." Across the table, 12 officials studied their papers with painful devotion. The chancellor removed the ledger from his head and turned it upright. Bram wiped gravy from the king's sleeve while wearing the patient expression of a man reconsidering every choice that had led him into public service. On the 3rd breath, Theron set Arya gently on her feet. Her wolf objected by making her fingers cling to his collar. Arya peeled them loose one at a time. "I apologize, Your Majesty." The king finally looked up. "For the collision or the seasoning?" 2 months earlier, Arya had never touched Alpha King Theron Caldane. She had never entered his castle, insulted his breathing, or poured gravy on his government. At 28, she was an unnoticed warehouse clerk with 3 pairs of wool stockings and a wolf that had awakened 27 years late. Then a blizzard tried to kill her. It began while she was returning from a border storehouse. Snow erased the road before sunset. Wind pushed through her cloak seams, sharp as ground glass, and turned every pine into a pale shadow. Arya had survived alone since she was 16. She knew how to repair a roof, stretch 6 coins across 10 meals, and identify a dishonest flour merchant by the nervous condition of his thumbs. She did not know how to reason with a she-wolf that had existed consciously for only 1 year. The wolf woke beneath her ribs when the cold became dangerous. "Run." The command struck with enough force to bend Arya forward. She caught a tree trunk and fought for breath. Her gloves had stiffened. Snow packed against her boots, and the road had disappeared behind a white wall. "We are running," she told the presence inside her. "Badly, but with commitment." The wolf disagreed. It wanted 4 legs, thick fur, and teeth large enough to threaten the weather. Arya had shifted only twice before. Both attempts had ended with damaged furniture and an apology to a goat. She tried to hold the change back, but cold had already weakened the barrier between them. Pain rolled through her bones. The last thing her human mind remembered was falling into snow and thinking that death seemed unnecessarily wet. Her she-wolf remembered everything after that. She remembered the terror of waking inside a body she could not guide. She remembered one hind leg refusing to bear weight. She remembered snow filling her nose and the sky turning dark above the ravine. Most of all, she remembered a cedar scent moving through the storm. An enormous gray wolf reached her first. He carried the crushing presence of an alpha, but he lowered his head before approaching. His amber eyes watched her without challenge. The frightened she-wolf bared her teeth. He lay down in the snow. He did not force her to submit. He waited while ice gathered along his back. When she could no longer hold up her head, he crawled forward and pressed his warm body against hers. The bond struck between them like a second heartbeat. Mate. The word did not mean romance to the terrified wolf. It meant heat. It meant another living body between her and the wind. It meant she had stopped dying alone. Theron shifted back only after Bram reached them with blankets. The beta helped carry her to an abandoned hunting lodge, while the storm buried the track behind them. No healer could reach the lodge for 3 nights. Theron remained beside her through every fevered change. He fed her warm herbal water from a wooden spoon, held her when her body shook, and let her sleeping paws occupy most of his chest. She bit the spoon twice. She bit Bram once. She never bit Theron, although she growled at him whenever he tried to move. By the second night, the Alpha King had surrendered his cloak, half the blankets, and all authority over his left arm. Her wolf slept across it with the conviction of a creature claiming newly discovered land. Bram watched his king attempt to drink broth with the wrong hand. I could move her paw, the beta suggested. Theron's gaze dropped to the black-brown wolf curled against him. Even unconscious, she looked ready to defend her pillow. You have already been bitten, Bram flexed his bandaged thumb. That sounded almost sympathetic. The king brought the cup to his mouth with great dignity. Some broth reached him. The rest reached his shirt. On the third morning, the wind weakened. Firelight moved over the lodge walls, and the room smelled of pine smoke, wet wool, and crushed fever leaf. The she-wolf stirred inside the blankets. Theron felt the human consciousness rising before Arya opened her eyes. He turned his back immediately and pulled another blanket over her changing body. When Arya woke, she was human again, wrapped from shoulders to ankles in heavy brown wool. Every muscle hurt. A tall man stood beside the window with his back toward her. His dark hair brushed the collar of a shirt that appeared to have lost a disagreement with a bowl of soup. Bram set folded clothes beside the bed and introduced the man. Arya considered pretending to faint again. It was one thing to wake nearly naked in a hunting lodge. It was another to learn that the man politely studying the blizzard was Alpha King Theron Caldane, ruler of the entire Northern Territory. Her wolf surged toward him with such joy that Arya nearly rolled off the bed. Theron caught the blanket before it followed. Your wolf is awake, he observed. Unfortunately, so am I. His mouth shifted at one corner. It was not quite a smile, but it suggested he kept one for private use. Bram escorted the king outside while Arya dressed. The borrowed trousers were too long, and the sweater could have housed a second clerk. When the men returned, she sat near the fire with both sleeves folded to her elbows. The mate bond hummed under her skin. Arya knew enough about wolves to recognize it. Her she-wolf knew enough to want immediate possession of the king's lap. Neither fact meant Arya understood the man standing before her. She held the blanket closed around her shoulders. My wolf recognizes you, she began. I don't know you yet. Theron accepted the boundary without hesitation. Then you will be given time to know me, if you choose. Relief weakened something tight inside her chest. She had expected authority, certainty, perhaps an announcement that ancient instinct had already settled her future. Instead, the most powerful alpha in the north waited for permission even to sit beside her. Arya nodded toward the opposite chair. The king took it. Bram remained near the door and attempted to look like a man who had not spent 3 days watching his ruler serve a wolf warm water. He failed because his bitten thumb was still bandaged. Arya noticed it. Did I do that? The beta studied the ceiling. A falling branch. The branch had teeth? Northern trees are defensive. Heat returned to her face. She did not remember anything after shifting, and shame made her stomach tighten. I would rather not hear the details yet. Theron gave Bram one warning glance. You won't. He kept that promise, even when the road opened and the royal healer arrived. Arya received a brief examination, clean clothes, and no humiliating stories about sleeping arrangements. Her she-wolf, however, remembered every arrangement. It watched Theron cross the lodge and pushed longing through Arya's limbs. Warm, safe, go. Arya gripped the chair until the impulse passed. That was her first victory. It lasted 11 seconds. When Theron bent to retrieve her dropped glove, the wolf took control of Arya's right hand. Her fingers closed around his sleeve and refused to release it. The king glanced at the stubborn hand. Then he looked at Arya's mortified face. Should I remain here? No. Her fingers tightened. Your vote appears divided. Arya used her left hand to pry the right one loose. My government is experiencing unrest. That time, Theron smiled fully. It transformed his severe face so completely that her human heart joined the unrest. The royal party escorted her home after the storm. Arya expected their connection to become a private, inconvenient memory. Kings returned to castles. Warehouse clerks returned to leaking roofs and stacks of barley receipts. Then Bram recovered the waterproof ledger she had protected beneath her cloak. 3 days later, an official carriage stopped outside her rented cottage. It was large enough to transport a minor cathedral. The driver handed her a royal letter requesting her assistance with winter relief accounts. Arya read the letter twice. Her wolf recognized Theron's cedar scent on the paper and made her press it against her nose. The driver politely looked away. Arya lowered the letter. Ink inspection. Naturally, miss. The letter explained that her ledger showed a difference between the grain dispatched from the capital and the amounts recorded at 3 border storehouses. The error might be theft, a measurement problem, or poor arithmetic. Theron wanted the person who noticed it to conduct the review. The position lasted 6 weeks. It came with wages, a room at the castle, and authority to examine relief records. Arya accepted because the work mattered. Her wolf accepted because the paper smelled like Theron. They arrived at the same decision for entirely different reasons. Northreach Castle rose from a granite ridge above the city. Its towers were square, practical, and apparently designed by someone who disliked decorative joy. Snow crowded the battlements. Smoke carried the scents of oak, baking bread, and hot iron across the lower courtyard. Arya entered through the staff gate with one trunk and the determination to behave professionally. Theron met her in the records room. He wore a dark military coat with bronze clasps. No crown rested on his black hair, but he did not require one. Guards straightened when he passed, and clerks lowered their voices as if his shadow possessed rank. Arya's wolf took control of 2 fingers. They hooked around the edge of his coat. She noticed only when Theron tried to step away and his coat pulled tight. I am sorry, he glanced down. For detaining the king? For doing it without the correct paperwork. The head clerk made a choking sound behind a shelf. Theron freed his coat with care. He did not touch her hand until she nodded. Then his thumb rested briefly against her knuckles. The wolf quieted at once. That should have reassured Arya. Instead, the speed of its surrender worried her. She buried the concern beneath work. The records room offered excellent burial conditions. 37 ledgers waited on a long table, each thick enough to stun a burglar. Arya spent her first day comparing dispatch weights, local measures, weather losses, and signatures. By supper, she had found 2 arithmetic errors, 1 spilled wine stain, and a clerk who used the same symbol for 7 and 9. Theron returned at dusk to review her progress. His presence moved through the quiet room before his boots reached her table. Her wolf rose eagerly. Arya set both palms on the ledger. No, she whispered. Theron stopped across from her. Was that meant for me? Not unless you plan to throw me across the furniture. The king considered the distance between them. I had no such plan. Her wolf supplied one. Arya stood to fetch another page. One knee suddenly weakened. Her body turned toward Theron, and she collided with his chest hard enough to send a cloud of flour from his coat. They stared at each other through the white dust. He had come directly from inspecting the castle bakery. Arya knew this, because half the bakery now covered his shoulders. Theron steadied her waist. This appears organized. It was not my plan. That is what concerns me. Bram entered carrying a sealed report. He stopped when he saw the Alpha King powdered like an expensive cake, and Arya pressed against him. The Beta looked at the ceiling again. It had become his preferred refuge. I will return when the accounting is less physical. Arya escaped Theron's arms and sat down too quickly. Her chair protested against the floor. Inside her, the wolf curled around the memory of warmth. It had received barely a second of contact, yet peace spread through Arya's body. Theron brushed flour from his sleeve. His expression had gone thoughtful. We need rules. That was how the three-breath agreement began. If the wolf pushed Arya toward him, Theron could catch her for safety. He would hold her for 3 natural breaths, unless Arya asked him to release her sooner. During meetings, she could touch his wrist beforehand to settle the wolf. No alpha command would be used. No mate claim would be announced. Her work decisions would remain entirely separate from their bond. Bram wrote the agreement because both parties wanted a witness. He titled it Emergency Contact Procedure. Arya read the heading. That sounds medical. The Beta sanded the ink. The alternative was rules for when the accounts clerk attacks the king. Theron preferred the second title. Arya did not ask his opinion. The agreement improved matters for almost 2 days. On the first morning, Arya touched Theron's wrist before the Winter Council. His pulse remained steady beneath her fingertips. Her she-wolf leaned toward that rhythm, recognized safety, and settled without taking control. Arya survived the entire meeting in her own chair. Bram marked a small victory beside the date. On the second morning, Theron was delayed. Arya tried to begin without him. Her wolf noticed the empty royal chair and made Arya look at the door 17 times. When the king finally entered, she was carrying a stack of mining reports. The wolf pulled 1 foot sideways. Arya managed to catch herself against the table. The reports did not. They fanned across the chamber and struck 3 ministers in order of seniority. Theron surveyed the paper-covered floor. Was I meant to catch those? The agreement covers me, not government documents. A narrow interpretation. The chancellor crawled beneath the table in search of page 6. He emerged with page 9 and a new respect for narrow interpretations. By the end of the week, the wolf had learned every weakness in their rules. It was forbidden to throw Arya during official work. Nothing prohibited moving her chair. Each time she became absorbed in numbers, her feet pushed against the floor. By noon, she had traveled from her desk to within 1 arm's length of Theron. Arya looked down and discovered the migration. Did you move my chair? Theron kept his attention on a treaty. I have been signing my name for 20 minutes. That is not an answer. It is a strong alibi. Bram measured the distance with a piece of string. He calculated that Arya's wolf could move furniture at a rate of 8 inches per tax report. The next day, Arya wedged her chair against a stone column. Her wolf made her steal Theron's glove instead. She found it tucked inside her ledger after lunch. The dark leather carried cedar, cold air, and a faint trace of smoke. Her wolf purred so deeply that the sensation vibrated behind Arya's ribs. She marched the glove to the throne room. Theron sat beneath carved oak beams while 2 engineers explained bridge repairs. Arya waited until the men finished, then placed the glove on his desk. You left this in my accounts. The king examined it. Did I? His bare right hand suggested he had noticed the loss. Arya narrowed her eyes. Are you encouraging her? I would never interfere with an official investigation. His wolf moved behind his amber gaze with unmistakable satisfaction. She leaned closer. If another item of royal clothing appears in my room, I am charging storage fees. Theron's voice lowered. Would a cloak cost more? The warmth in his tone reached the woman before it reached her wolf. Arya retreated with as much dignity as a blushing accounts clerk could gather. She heard Bram cough behind the throne. It sounded suspiciously like a laugh wearing a uniform. Work gave Arya reasons to remain near the king that had nothing to do with instinct. She discovered Theron never signed a supply order without reading the quantities. He knew which villages had lost roofs and which mountain roads froze first. He also knew almost nothing about eating at reasonable hours. During their second week, she found him reviewing coal requests long after midnight. The small council room had gone cold. A single lamp smoked beside his elbow, filling the air with hot oil and singed wick. Arya placed a bowl of stew on his report. Theron looked at the bowl, then at her. Is this an accounting method? Yes. I counted how many meals you missed. The total was embarrassing. He moved the report before the gravy could repeat history. Kings do not answer to warehouse clerks. Hunger outranks both of us. Her wolf approved of feeding him. It also wanted to sit in his lap while he ate, but Arya rejected that proposal before negotiations began. Theron tasted the stew. His shoulders loosened by a degree. You made this? The kitchen made it. I heroically carried it upstairs. His quiet laugh warmed the room better than the neglected fire. He asked about her life before the castle. Arya explained that her parents had died when she was 1. A woman named Malin Rell had taken her in and raised her alone. Malin had mended clothes for travelers and brewed a bitter bedtime tea every evening. She claimed it prevented nightmares. Arya had suspected the nightmares, simply refused to drink it. Her adoptive mother died from illness when Arya was 16. Since then, Arya had moved between rented rooms and practical jobs. Numbers remained where she placed them. They did not fall ill, leave, or require burial. Theron set down his spoon. You should not have been alone at 16. The sympathy in his voice was gentle enough to hurt. Arya traced one scratch in the tabletop. I had an elderly landlord, 2 unpleasant hens, and a roof that leaked with great loyalty. It was crowded by my standards. The king did not offer pity after that. He told her instead about losing his mother young and being trained for rule before he understood grief. His father had measured affection in responsibilities. Theron had inherited the kingdom, the habits, and a belief that rest was something other people required. Arya pushed the breadbasket closer to him. Your father was wrong about at least one thing. Only one? I have not audited him. The conversation changed how she saw Theron. He remained intimidating in public, but now she noticed the man beneath the authority. She saw him warm his hands over kitchen fires during inspections and carry broken crates out of workers' paths. She watched him remember a guard's injured knee and a laundress's new grandchild. Her wolf had chosen safety in 3 frozen nights. Arya's affection formed more slowly. It grew through hot stew, honest reports, and the way he never touched her without leaving room to refuse. The distinction mattered. It mattered even more when he left the castle. Theron traveled to inspect the western bridge before dawn. He expected to return the same evening. Ice delayed the party, and evening became the following afternoon. At first, Arya's wolf merely listened for him. By noon, it paced inside her. She lost the same column of figures 4 times. Cedar seemed to linger in every corridor, each fading trace, pulling her toward the courtyard. At sunset, the wolf found Theron's spare cloak hanging in a strategy room. Arya regained complete control while standing in her bedroom with the cloak wrapped around her shoulders. She had no memory of climbing 2 staircases or passing the royal guards. Fear replaced embarrassment. The cloak smelled of him. Her wolf quieted instantly and pressed close to the scent as if a wall of snow waited outside the door. Arya sat on the edge of the bed. He is delayed, not dead. The wolf answered with a pulse of raw panic. Cold. Alone. Find him. Arya understood none of the images that followed. She felt snow against fur, a wooden spoon between teeth, and a broad chest beneath her paws. Then the memories vanished, leaving her shaken. Bram found her after supper. He took in the stolen cloak and her white face. For once, he made no joke. The bridge party is safe, he assured her. A wheel broke. They will be here before midnight. Arya held the cloak tighter. Why does she remember his heartbeat? The beta's expression changed. She saw the answer arrive 1 second before he tried to hide it. Bram. He rubbed his unbitten thumb. You asked us not to discuss the lodge. I am asking now. The story came in careful pieces. Bram explained the 3 nights, the fever, and the way Theron had kept her wolf alive. He described her sleeping against the king's chest and refusing to let him move. He omitted the broth on Theron's shirt. That detail belonged to the king. Arya listened until the dependence made terrible sense. Her wolf had awakened in mortal danger. Its first clear experience had been Theron's body standing between it and death. To the wolf, he was not simply a mate. He was shelter itself. Hoofbeats entered the courtyard near midnight. The wolf surged so violently that Arya reached the entrance hall before she realized she had left her room. The great doors opened on a blast of cold air. Theron stepped inside with snow in his hair. His gaze found Arya at once, wrapped in his cloak and fighting her own feet. The wolf won. Arya flew across the last 3 steps. Theron dropped his gloves and caught her around the waist. The force moved him backward half a pace. His face turned into her hair as her arms locked around his shoulders. Warm, safe, alive. Relief swept through the wolf, but Arya felt it too. Her fear for him had not belonged entirely to instinct. Theron held her for 3 breaths. This time, he did not slow them. You know, he murmured. Most subjects greet me with a bow. Arya lifted her burning face. Most subjects were not thrown at you by an internal committee. His hands remained steady at her waist. Should I put you down? The wolf shouted no. Arya heard her own answer beneath it. Not yet. He held her for a 4th breath, then a 5th. Bram came through the doors carrying a broken carriage pin. He saw them and quietly turned around. I will report the wheel first, he announced to nobody. It has fewer feelings. Theron came to Arya's workroom the following morning. Sunlight lay pale across the account table. The cedar cloak had been folded between them like evidence. He did not minimize what had happened. My presence calms her, he acknowledged. That does not mean she should need me to function. Arya had feared he might enjoy being indispensable. His concern loosened the last of her anger. I like being near you, she admitted, but I need to know when the choice is mine. Theron rested his hand on the table, palm upward. Then we begin there. They changed the rules. Before meetings, Arya would first settle the wolf through her own breathing. Only then could she choose to touch Theron's wrist. If the wolf tried to take control, Arya would name 5 things she could see and 4 she could feel. Theron would still catch her if she fell. He would not use closeness as the first answer to every distress. Bram added a new line to the agreement. No royal cloaks may be taken without the king inside them. Theron read it. That seems unnecessarily restrictive. Arya took the paper from him. You are not helping. I offered to remain inside the cloak. Her wolf considered the proposal excellent. Arya sent both of them away. Training produced small victories and several public losses. She learned to stop her hand before it reached for his sleeve. She could pass his chair once without touching him, provided she did not smell cedar first. She could work for an hour while he was elsewhere in the castle. On the less successful days, her chair continued migrating. Once, she found herself carrying his empty teacup through 3 corridors. Her wolf apparently believed it could track him through tableware. Another time, she resisted the urge to enter his office, only to discover her left hand knocking on the door without her permission. Theron opened it. Who won? The arm remains disputed territory. He invited both territories inside for tea. Their first deliberate outing happened under the respectable title of warehouse inspection. Theron selected the southern storehouse, although it had submitted flawless records for 8 years. Arya noticed this before they reached the courtyard. There is no accounting reason for this visit. He helped her into the carriage. The hinges may have deteriorated. The hinge report was signed yesterday. Then we should reward their efficiency with personal attention. Bram rode opposite them. He studied the passing city with the intensity of a man refusing to witness a king invent a date around door hardware. The storehouse hinges were excellent. Theron inspected them for nearly 5 seconds. Then he walked with Arya through the winter market, bought roasted chestnuts, and listened while she explained why merchants preferred local measures. Snow softened the rooftops, cinnamon, wood smoke, and hot sugar drifted between the stalls. Children slid on the frozen fountain until a watchman pretended not to see them. At a ribbon stall, Theron selected a dark green strip that matched Arya's eyes. For marking ledgers, he claimed. The ribbon was silk. You mark state documents with twine. A serious failure in royal standards. She let him buy it. The wolf liked the ribbon because his fingers had touched it. Arya liked the man because he had remembered the color of her eyes. On the return journey, their shoulders rested together. No instinct had pushed her there. Theron noticed. He said nothing, which made the quiet more intimate than a speech. The following council meeting produced the gravy incident. Arya had already settled her wolf before entering. She had touched Theron's wrist. She had named 5 visible objects, including a bowl that should never have been near financial records. Then the Chancellor announced that Theron would leave for 4 days to inspect the Northern Pass. The wolf heard only leave. It took control as Arya passed behind the royal chair. Theron's wolf warned him through the bond. By then, the pattern had become familiar. He extended one arm without looking up and caught her cleanly around the waist. The ledgers fell. The gravy invaded. After Theron set her upright, Arya expected humiliation to swallow the rest of the meeting. Instead, he removed his stained coat and continued discussing the bridge as if catching airborne clerks belonged among ordinary royal duties. Nobody laughed at her. Nobody questioned her position. When one visiting lord whispered the word unstable, Theron's gaze crossed the chamber. Miss Rell discovered the missing winter grain, the king informed him. Until your work saves 3 villages, I suggest you avoid evaluating hers. The lord became interested in his sleeve. Arya's gratitude arrived with an uncomfortable amount of affection. After the council, she followed Theron into the passage. Bram had taken the ruined coat away, leaving the king in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled below his elbows. Thank you, she told him. He stopped beside a narrow window. Snowlight sharpened the line of his jaw. He was wrong. He was also politically useful. That condition appears temporary. Arya laughed before she could prevent it. Theron's attention softened. He stepped closer, but not enough to touch. I will cancel the northern journey if 4 days is too much. The offer tempted both halves of her. That was precisely why she refused it. No, I need to learn that your absence is not another blizzard. Pride warmed his eyes. And I need to learn that protecting you does not mean removing every difficulty. Her wolf wanted to bridge the space between them. Arya felt the desire, considered it, and made her own decision. She took his hand. Theron's fingers closed around hers. That was me, she clarified. I know. The certainty in his answer stayed with her long after they separated. The northern journey began 2 mornings later. Theron left before sunrise with 6 guards, 2 engineers, and enough dried meat to survive a siege. Bram remained at the castle. He claimed somebody had to prevent Arya from tracking the king with stolen crockery. Theron had left her 1 glove by agreement. It rested inside a desk drawer, available if panic became unmanageable. Arya disliked needing it, but she also understood that refusing every support was pride, not independence. The first day passed with only 3 unnecessary glances toward the gate. On the second, snow began before noon. Her wolf paced, and Arya's attention broke apart. She opened the drawer, touched the glove, then closed it again. We are warm, she reminded the frightened presence. We have food. He knows the road. She placed one hand over her own heartbeat. The wolf pushed a memory of Theron's chest against her mind. Arya answered with the rhythm beneath her palm. This one belongs to us. Listen. The panic did not disappear. It became smaller. She completed an entire page while the glove remained in the drawer. Bram arrived with a message from the northern party and found her crying over a coal ledger. He placed the sealed note beside her. Are the numbers especially moving? They are badly arranged. A common tragedy. The message reported clear roads and no danger. Theron had added a private line beneath the official seal. I have not misplaced myself. Please inform all concerned territories. Arya laughed into her sleeve. Her wolf calmed enough to become offended. The third day brought a practical crisis. Two villages reported that their coal deliveries were short. The capital record showed full amounts, and every cart bore an intact seal. Arya spent 6 hours comparing figures. The weights matched until she noticed that the mountain suppliers measured coal by deep iron baskets. Capital clerks used wider wooden bins. Both called the quantity 1 load. Nothing had been stolen. The same word described two different amounts. She calculated the shortage, redirected reserve carts, and changed the forms before sunset. The work did more for her wolf than the glove. Purpose gave their shared body something firm to stand on. Theron returned on the fourth afternoon. Arya waited in the courtyard with officials and stable hands. She wanted to run to him. Her wolf wanted to achieve flight. She held her ground while the royal party entered through the gate. Theron dismounted. Snow dusted his shoulders, and fatigue darkened the skin beneath his eyes. He looked at Arya with a question he did not ask aloud. She walked to him. Every step belonged to her. Then she put both arms around his waist. His breath left in a quiet sound. He folded her against him while horses stamped and guards developed sudden concern for their saddles. 3 breaths? He asked near her hair. Arya listened to her wolf, then to herself. 7. We had a difficult discussion. I am willing to support negotiations. Bram began counting at an unreasonable speed. Theron dismissed him with one raised hand. That evening, Arya explained the coal measures over supper. Theron approved the corrected forms and ordered immediate deliveries. He praised her in front of the council, then privately asked whether she had used the glove. Once, she admitted. I did not need to keep it with me. His pleasure held no disappointment at being needed less. That mattered more than the praise. Their courtship began without an announcement. Theron appeared in the records room with tea he did not drink. Arya attended inspections that required no accounting knowledge. They walked the battlements after supper, where the wind turned his ears red, and he pretended kings were immune to temperature. Bram followed at a respectful distance. His distance became more respectful whenever Theron looked at Arya's mouth. One evening, they stopped above the torchlit courtyard. Snow had cleared, leaving a hard black sky crowded with stars. The city below smelled of chimney smoke and bread cooling in late bakeries. Theron rested his hands on the stone wall. You have known me for 7 weeks. I have audited you for 6 of them. Is that favorable? Arya considered the question. Your bridge spending is sensible. Your meal schedule is criminal. Your excuses for visiting warehouses lack imagination. His shoulder brushed hers. And the man? Her humor quieted. The man had slept upright for 3 nights to keep her wolf alive. He had offered patience when instinct gave him a claim he could have abused. He listened when she disagreed, and he never mistook her need for consent. The man is becoming difficult to resist. Theron turned toward her. His amber eyes searched her face, careful even now. Is that your wolf speaking? Arya stepped into him by choice. She is less patient. His hand rose to her cheek, warm against the cold. He waited until she leaned into the touch. Their first kiss was slow and restrained for approximately 2 seconds. Then Arya's wolf celebrated. Her arms flew around Theron's neck. His back struck the battlement wall, and a cap of snow dropped from the stone onto his hair. He broke the kiss with snow sliding down one eyebrow. Arya stared at him. That final part may have involved assistance. Theron brushed snow from his face. I support her contribution. They kissed again, farther from the wall. Bram waited beside the stairwell and offered the king a towel when they returned. Weather damage? The beta asked. Theron took the towel. Localized snowfall. Arya walked past with her dignity and his hand firmly linked through hers. After the kiss, Flirting entered the castle like an unauthorized guest and refused to leave. Theron began counting the 3 breaths too slowly again. Arya threatened to appoint an official timekeeper. He suggested the timekeeper stand outside the room. She returned his glove but kept the green ribbon. He found the ribbon tied around a report requesting repairs to her bedroom fireplace. The repairs were completed within an hour. Arya informed him that other requests had waited 3 days. Those reports were not wearing your ribbon, he explained. That is corruption. Theron leaned back with the calm of a ruler who expected favorable treatment from his judge. Then, arrest me. Her wolf liked that proposal for reasons unrelated to law. Arya filed the report without answering. Castle staff adjusted to their relationship more quickly than either of them expected. Servants stopped gasping when Arya appeared in the king's arms. Guards learned to leave a clear path beside his chair. The kitchen removed uncovered liquids from council meetings. Only Chancellor Osric resisted. He believed royal dignity required distance. He expressed this belief while Arya was sitting on Theron's lap after a particularly forceful loss of balance. The Chancellor kept his eyes on a point above their heads. Your Majesty, the council may misunderstand these interruptions. Theron signed the document resting beside Arya's hip. Which part is unclear? The accounts clerk, sire. Arya's wolf snuggled closer. She attempted to rise, but Theron's arm tightened for the remaining breath. She has a name, the king observed. Osric swallowed. Miss Rel's method of arrival is unconventional. It is efficient, Arya elbowed Theron gently. Do not encourage him. The Chancellor left with his concern unresolved and his understanding greatly improved. Their happiness did not eliminate the winter problem. It made the work warmer, but the weather remained unimpressed. The first major cold front reached Northreach during their 9th week together. Ice sealed the eastern road overnight. A roof beam cracked at the largest grain storehouse, trapping workers inside and threatening the reserve flour. Arya reached the courtyard while bells were still ringing. Theron was already organizing carts, ropes, and healers. His coat stood open over a half-fastened shirt. Snow blew through the gate and melted against the hot iron lanterns. He tried to order her back inside. Arya pointed out that she knew the storehouse plan better than any guard. The north wall carries the damaged load, she explained. If they pull from the main doors, the upper floor will fall. Theron's protective instinct fought visibly with good judgment. Good judgment won by a narrow margin. You remain beside Bram. I remain where the measurements are useful. Bram climbed onto the rescue wagon. I will stand between both interpretations. The storehouse groaned when they arrived. Flour dust drifted from broken shutters, turning the snow below into pale paste. Workers shouted behind a blocked side door. Arya studied the beams through the open loading arch. The damaged roof leaned east. One wrong pull would collapse the loft. She directed the team toward a smaller rear hatch hidden behind stacked barrels. Theron lifted the first barrel alone. 4 guards tried not to appear unnecessary. The second barrel had frozen to the ground. He pulled harder. The bottom came loose while the sides remained in place. 100 dried apples poured over the Alpha King's boots. For one important second, everyone stared. Theron stood ankle-deep in fruit, with the expression of a ruler betrayed by agriculture. Arya covered her mouth. Her wolf was no help at all. It found his dignity under attack deeply charming. Not one word, he warned. She bent to clear the apples. I was going to praise your tactical harvest. Even Bram laughed, although he disguised it as a cough and nearly swallowed an apple. They opened the rear hatch. Theron crawled inside with 2 guards while Arya monitored the roof from the yard. The wind carried splintering wood and frightened voices. A second beam shifted. Arya felt it before she understood how. Power surged from the wolf and sharpened every sound. She heard nails pulling loose beneath the roof. She smelled the sudden fear of the men inside. Out! She shouted. Her voice carried something greater than volume. Every wolf in the yard froze, including 2 senior alphas. Then they moved at once, following her direction without question. Theron emerged with a worker across his shoulders. The rear roof collapsed behind him and sent flour through the hatch in a white cloud. Nobody was injured. The king set the worker down, then looked at Arya across the snow. His face, hair, and open shirt were coated in flour. Dried apples surrounded his boots. Arya had never seen a more impressive man or a less dignified baked good. Her relief broke the last of her control. The wolf threw her. Theron caught her, but the slippery apples shifted beneath him. They fell together into a snowbank. The rescue crew became extremely busy elsewhere. Arya landed on his chest. Flour rose around them. One dried apple rolled down his shoulder and stopped beside her cheek. Theron looked up at her. I believe the rules failed. The ground interfered. Should we discipline it? She laughed until the fear left her lungs. Then she kissed him in the snow while bells announced that every worker was safe. The moment lasted only briefly. There were people to warm, grain to move, and a damaged storehouse to empty. Arya rose first and offered the king her hand. They worked until nightfall. Her directions saved most of the winter reserve. Theron ordered workers to use the old mill as temporary storage, and Arya discovered the building already sheltered families displaced by the storm. Instead of removing them, she reorganized the ground floor. Grain occupied the dry western rooms. Families retained the heated east wing. The solution cost less than transporting everything across the frozen city. Theron approved it before the chancellor could turn the matter into a 7-page question. At midnight, the king and Arya returned to the castle smelling of flour, smoke, and wet wool. Bram followed with one dried apple still lodged inside his boot. The crisis had revealed something neither mate bond nor comedy could explain. Arya's command had stopped every wolf in the yard. She remembered their instant obedience and felt cold despite the fire. Theron knelt before her chair in the private sitting room. He did not call her dangerous. He did not pretend the moment had been ordinary. Your wolf is stronger than anyone believed, he told her. We will learn why. Arya searched his face. Are you afraid of me? I watched you save 11 people while I was dressed as a flour sack. Fear was not the strongest emotion available. Her laugh came out unsteadily. He took her hands. Whatever she is not the only reason I love you. The word love changed the room. Fire cracked behind him. Melted snow tapped from the roof outside, and somewhere in the corridor, Bram swore at the apple in his boot. Arya looked at the man holding her hands. Her wolf reached for him, but it did not take control. It waited with her. I love you too. Theron's severe composure disappeared. His smile belonged to the man she had discovered beneath the crown. He rose and kissed her. This time, no wall, snowbank, ledger, bowl, barrel, or government official suffered damage. Arya considered that personal growth. Breakfast supplied the first test of their newly spoken love. Theron entered the private dining room and pulled out the chair beside his own. Arya deliberately chose the chair across from him. Her wolf objected. The king looked wounded on its behalf. Distance encourages conversation, Arya explained. Theron moved his plate across the table and sat beside her instead. A strong policy. She gave him a severe look. He buttered her toast with the innocence of a man who had never relocated breakfast for romantic reasons. Halfway through the meal, his knee touched hers. Arya did not move away. Her wolf relaxed, pleased by the contact but no longer desperate for it. Bram entered with the morning reports. He saw 2 untouched chairs on one side of the table, and both lovers crowded onto the other. Should I order a smaller table? Theron accepted the reports. A more efficient kingdom begins with efficient furniture. Arya stole the king's toast as punishment. He looked delighted by the sentence. The following month proved that love solved very little and improved almost everything. The damaged storehouse required repairs. The winter forms required new measurements. Arya's wolf required firm reminders that loving the king did not permit her to interrupt every meeting by climbing onto him. Theron disagreed with the final restriction. You are the head of government, Arya reminded him one morning. He sat behind his desk with her balanced on one knee. She had arrived there after the wolf objected to an ambassador standing too close. Government remains operational. You signed that report on my back. Theron examined the neat signature. A stable writing surface. She rose after the third breath, although he tried to count the last one twice. Their private courtship became public through accumulation rather than announcement. They ate together, worked together, and walked through the market without pretending to inspect hinges. Theron held her hand during council recesses. Arya corrected his meal schedule with the authority of an invading army. They kissed in quiet corridors, on the battlements, and once inside the pantry because the Chancellor had been approaching with tax proposals. Bram opened the pantry door, found them between jars of pickled onions, and closed it again. At the next guard briefing, he recommended alternative routes around the royal kitchen. Arya's control also improved. She could feel the wolf's desire without obeying it. During long meetings, she promised they would approach Theron afterward. Most days, the wolf accepted the delay. Some days, it interpreted afterward as the moment the Chancellor paused for breath. Theron remained an excellent catcher. One rainy afternoon, he left the castle for 6 hours. Arya experienced unease, but no panic. She worked, ate lunch, and resisted checking the gate. When he returned, she greeted him with a deliberate kiss instead of an involuntary collision. Her wolf rejoiced. Arya did too. That evening, Theron asked her to join him in the small council room where they had first shared stew. A fire glowed beneath the stone mantel. 2 bowls waited on the table, and neither covered a government report. Arya recognized the meal. "Are you recreating our first supper?" "No. The kitchen has only 1 stew." He was lying. The kitchen maintained at least 4 stews and a soup that claimed neutrality. Theron ate little. His thumb moved against the edge of his spoon, betraying nerves that armies had never managed to produce. Arya's wolf became alert. The king set down the spoon. "I want to marry you." Joy rose so quickly that Arya forgot to breathe. Theron continued before either half of her could leap across the table. "I will not ask until I am certain of one thing. Your wolf believes she cannot survive without me. I need to know you are not marrying me for the same reason." The question hurt because it was honest. It also proved he understood the difference she had fought to preserve. Arya looked around the room. She remembered bringing him stew, arguing over forms, and discovering the lonely man who wore duty like armor. She remembered his pride when she needed him less. Her answer belonged to her before she spoke it. "She needs the man who saved her," Arya told him. "I choose the man who never used that need against me." Theron went very still. "Was that a yes?" She reached across the table. "It will be when you ask the question properly." The Alpha King rose, came around the table, and lowered himself to 1 knee. His boot landed in Bram's cleaning bucket. The beta had left it outside the hearth alcove after removing ash. Water sloshed across the king's trouser leg. Theron looked down at the bucket attached to his foot. Arya pressed both hands over her mouth. "I can begin again," he offered. She shook her head because laughter had stolen speech. He removed the bucket, placed it beside him, and remained on 1 wet knee. "Arya Rell, will you marry me?" Her wolf pushed forward. Arya held it gently, savoring the fact that she could. "Yes." Then she launched herself at him by choice. Theron caught her from his kneeling position, but balance was beyond even an Alpha King's authority. They tipped onto the rug together. Bram entered at the sound. He studied the bucket, the wet floor, and the future royal couple lying beside the fire. "Should I congratulate you or fetch a healer?" Theron kept 1 arm around Arya. Both may be premature. She kissed him before he could recover his dignity. The engagement lasted 4 weeks. It might have lasted longer if the castle had been allowed to organize the wedding without opinions. Unfortunately, Northreach possessed 27 noble families and no shortage of people prepared to debate napkins. The Chancellor proposed a formal winter ceremony with 600 guests. Arya proposed 30 guests and warm food. The Chancellor looked as though she had suggested holding the vows in a stable. Theron supported Arya's number. His aunt supported 600. Bram supported leaving the kingdom under a false name. They settled on 80 guests, 1 public courtyard appearance, and a feast large enough for the city staff. The seamstress proposed a 12-foot train. Arya asked whether it came with 3 carriers and a rescue rope. They compromised on a short train with fine gold stitching. The seamstress muttered that practical queens were damaging the dignity of dramatic fabric. Arya's gown was deep green wool over cream silk, warm enough for a northern winter. The green ribbon from the market circled her bouquet. Theron attempted to inspect the preparations 3 times. On the 4th attempt, Arya caught him outside the fitting room. "Kings do not hide behind curtains," she informed him. Theron emerged far enough to appear almost innocent. "I was examining the stitching." Arya folded her arms across the half-finished gown. "You cannot sew." His gaze traveled over the green fabric before returning to her face. "That is why examination is required." She pushed him back into the corridor. He stole a kiss before the door closed and claimed it as an inspection fee. The wedding morning arrived bright and bitterly cold. Bells rolled over the snow-covered city. Cedar branches, white roses, and gold ribbons softened the castle's severe stone hall. Arya stood outside the ceremonial doors with Bram beside her. The Beta wore his formal black coat and the expression of a man personally responsible for keeping a national event upright. "The aisle is clear," he reported. "No gravy, loose rugs, damaged barrels, or cleaning buckets." Arya glanced at the solemn doors. "You checked?" The Beta adjusted his iron guard badge. "Twice. His Majesty checked for you." "I checked for him." Music began beyond the doors. Arya's wolf felt Theron waiting at the far end of the hall. Excitement surged through their shared body. It wanted to run, leap, and reach him before the musicians completed another note. Arya placed one hand over her heart. "We walk," she whispered inwardly. "At the end we can both choose." The wolf trembled but accepted. The doors opened. Theron stood beneath an arch of cedar. His dark, formal coat carried gold clasps, and his amber eyes never left her. The stern Alpha King looked one breath away from forgetting that 80 people were watching. Arya walked the entire aisle. Every step belonged to her. Her wolf remained close, eager but no longer steering their feet. Theron took her hands. His thumb brushed the green ribbon around her flowers. The vows were simple. He promised honesty, shelter without possession, and a place beside him that remained hers by choice. Arya promised loyalty, argument when necessary, and accurate accounts regardless of royal feelings. Several ministers looked relieved by the final promise. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Arya felt her wolf ask, "Now?" Arya smiled. "Now." She jumped. Theron caught his new wife around the waist and lifted her from the floor. Laughter moved through the hall as her arms circled his neck. "Was that you or your wolf?" he murmured. Arya touched her forehead to his. "Your wife. You may discuss the details with both of us later." He kissed her while the bells began again. The kiss was warm, public, and entirely chosen. Afterward, Theron placed the narrow gold circlet of Northreach on her head. The orphaned warehouse clerk became Alpha Queen because she had chosen the king, and because he had chosen all of her in return. The celebration continued into the afternoon. Arya danced with her husband, ate 2 slices of honey cake, and prevented her wolf from climbing into his chair during a toast. Theron considered this unnecessary restraint. "You are my queen now," he whispered beside her ear. "The chair is legally half yours." Arya gave the royal seat a doubtful glance. "That is not how furniture works." Theron's hand settled warmly over hers beneath the table. "I will issue a decree." She kissed his cheek to prevent further legislation. Near sunset, the royal archivist approached their table carrying the marriage register. He was a narrow, elderly man named Pell, known for distrusting candles near paper and people near everything else. Arya signed her new title beneath Theron's name. Before applying the royal seal, Pell checked the information already entered beside her signature. Her birth parents were unknown, her birthplace was uncertain, and Malin Rell was listed as the woman who had raised her. The archivist's pen stopped at Malin's name. The archivist looked at the old pendant resting against her wedding gown. Malin had left it to Arya with a warning never to sell it. Age had softened its carved crest, but not erased it. Pell's face lost its color. He excused himself and returned 20 minutes later with a sealed diplomatic inventory. Dust marked his black sleeves. The feast continued behind him, but the joy had left his eyes. Theron rose beside Arya. "What did you find?" Pell opened the inventory with shaking fingers. Malin Rel was not born in Northreach. She served in the royal household of neighboring Avaloon before its fall. Arya touched the pendant. Its metal felt strangely warm beneath her thumb. The archivist stared at the faded crest. "That belonged to a child declared dead 27 years ago," he whispered. The music and laughter seemed to move farther away. Arya looked from Pell to her new husband. "What child?" The old man swallowed. "The last princess of Avaloon." For one full second, Arya assumed Pell had swallowed more wedding wine than wisdom. Her she-wolf chose that moment to climb into Theron's lap, apparently believing lost princesses should face dynastic shocks from the safest available chair. The old archivist watched Avaloon's dead royal heir sit on a northern king and drop the marriage seal into the honey cake. It landed upright. Bram studied the seal protruding from the icing. A strong finish to the ceremony. Nobody at the wedding table laughed with confidence. Music still floated through Northreach's great hall. Guests danced beneath cedar branches and gold ribbons, unaware that their new queen had just acquired a second possible title. Honey, hot wine, and wood smoke sweetened the air. Arya barely noticed any of it. "The last princess died," she reminded Pell. The archivist recovered the seal with a napkin. Pink icing clung to the royal crest. "She was declared dead," he corrected. "No body was recovered. Her nurse disappeared the same night." Theron's arm remained around Arya's waist. He did not tighten it or try to hold her in place. He simply stayed warm and solid beneath her while the room seemed to tilt. Her wolf liked this arrangement. It considered historical disaster an excellent reason for permanent lap privileges. Arya forced herself upright. "Where is the record?" Pell indicated the sealed inventory in his hands. It listed a diplomatic chest placed in Northreach's care before Avaloon fell. The chest had remained unopened because the old treaty allowed access only to Avaloon's royal family or its keeper of seals. The feast continued without them. Theron, Arya, Bram, and Pell crossed the castle in wedding clothes, while servants carried cake past them in the opposite direction. The contrast offended Bram's sense of order. "Most royal couples leave their wedding for a bedroom," he observed. "You are taking an archivist into a cellar." Theron kept hold of Arya's hand. "Our marriage is scholarly. Your marriage dropped gravy on government." Pell unlocked the lower archive. Cool, dry air met them, scented with leather dust and cedar oil. Shelves rose beneath a curved stone ceiling. Each row carried labels precise enough to delight Arya and terrify ordinary people. The Avaloon chest stood behind an iron screen. Dark bronze bands crossed its oak lid and framed the heavy lock. Pell held up both hands before anyone approached. The treaty seal must not be broken without the keeper. Arya looked at the box containing her possible childhood. "Where is this keeper?" "Upstairs, eating your wedding cake." Sabine Oris had arrived in Northreach with Avaloon's winter trade delegation. She was 70, sharp-backed, and capable of making silence sound like criticism. Pell returned with her 12 minutes later. The keeper still held a dessert fork. She stopped inside the archive, took one look at Arya's pendant, and forgot to lower it. "Where did you get that?" Arya explained that Malin had left it to her. Sabine's stern face changed at the name. She did not kneel or declare a miracle. She handed Bram the fork, inspected the pendant through a small lens, and compared its worn crest with the chest seal. "It is genuine," Sabine concluded. "That proves Malin carried a royal pendant. It does not prove whose neck she placed it around." Arya appreciated the woman's refusal to turn resemblance into evidence. Her wolf did not. It disliked Sabine's cool scent and made Arya lean backward until her shoulders rested against Theron's chest. The keeper noticed. "Is the new queen unwell?" "Her wolf is cautious," Theron explained. Bram looked at Arya reclining against the king. "Extremely cautious, from a seated position." Sabine removed the bronze treaty key from a chain at her waist. Pell pressed Northreach's matching key into the opposite side of the lock. Both keys turned. The chest opened with a dry wooden sigh. Inside lay diplomatic letters, a narrow portrait case, and a linen packet sealed in red wax. Sabine opened the letters first. They recorded the final weeks before Avaloon's palace coup. The last king and queen had sent valuables and birth documents north for protection. Their enemies had already threatened the royal nursery. One letter named Malin Rel as junior nurse to Princess Ariella Vaughn, aged 13 months. Arya stared at the first 4 letters of the child's name. Malin had told her that Arya was the only name written on the blanket in which she had been found. Apparently, that statement had been true in the narrowest possible way. She shortened it, Arya murmured. Theron's thumb moved across her knuckles. She gave you a name you could keep. Sabine opened the portrait case. It held a small painting of Avaloon's last queen, with a dark-haired infant on her lap. Time had faded the colors, but not the woman's green eyes. They were Arya's eyes. The infant wore the same bronze pendant. Bram leaned nearer. The child has your expression. She is 1 year old. She already disapproves of the painter. Evidence gathered without becoming certainty. The age matched. The name matched. The nurse and pendant matched. Yet portraits could mislead, and Malin might have rescued another child after the princess died. The linen packet contained the final test. Sabine unfolded a round disc of black stone set inside a bronze frame. The old Avaloon kings had used it to verify royal scent before succession ceremonies. It did not grant power or choose rulers. It only reacted to the distinct wolf line recorded within it. This requires 1 drop of blood, the keeper explained. Theron looked at Arya rather than the stone. Only if you consent. The choice settled her more than any command could have done. Arya took the clean steel pin Sabine offered. The sharp point stung her thumb. 1 red drop struck the black surface. Gold lines appeared through the stone like sunlight under ice. At the same instant, her she-wolf rose. Power rushed through Arya's bones. It filled the archive, knocked dust from the shelves, and made every wolf present draw a sudden breath. Pell sat down hard on a document stool. Sabine bowed her head. Bram dropped the dessert fork, then bent to retrieve it before royal history could damage the cake service, too. Theron alone remained standing without effort. His alpha presence met hers like a mountain beside a storm. He did not push back. He gave her power room to exist. The gold lines formed Avaloon's crest. Sabine lifted her gaze. Ariella Vaughn survived. Arya heard the words, but her wolf heard only the strong heartbeat behind her. Too much power, too many strangers, too many scents. It seized control. Arya turned and launched herself at her husband from less than 2 feet away. Theron caught her easily. A short flight. Her face disappeared against his neck. Do not review the technique. Sabine watched the lost princess cling to a foreign king. Her expression suggested Avaloon's succession manuals had omitted several modern developments. The confirmation should have answered Arya's questions. Instead, it multiplied them. She had entered the archive as an orphan who had married a king. She left as a queen who had apparently been born a princess. Bram tried her possible formal title while they climbed the stairs. Her Majesty, Alpha Queen of Northreach, Princess Ariella of Avaloon, Keeper of Accurate Coal Measurements. Arya did not look back. Remove the final part. The coal villages may object. Theron squeezed her hand. I support the coal title. She threatened to audit both men. The wedding guests learned only that an urgent archive matter had interrupted the feast. Theron refused to announce anything before Arya understood it herself. They returned to their private rooms well after midnight. Wedding candles burned low beside a bed scattered with cedar petals. Someone had placed chilled wine near the fire. Another servant had folded 2 white robes on a chair. Arya stood in the middle of the romantic arrangement, holding a royal birth record. Theron removed his formal coat. This is not how I imagined our wedding night. Were there fewer dead kingdoms? Considerably fewer documents. Her wolf urged her toward him. Arya crossed the room by choice and rested her forehead against his chest. The familiar heartbeat steadied her, but it no longer erased the questions. Theron folded his arms around her. You are still the woman I married this morning. This morning, I had one title and an uncertain birthplace. You had 6 titles. Bram was being restrained. She laughed against his shirt. The sound loosened the tightness beneath her ribs. He kissed her hair and offered to read the remaining letters with her after breakfast. The decision could wait until they had slept. Her she-wolf strongly supported going to bed. It also supported remaining attached to Theron throughout the process. Arya lifted her face. She believes marriage has abolished the 3-breath rule. His amber eyes warmed. A thoughtful legal interpretation. You are encouraging her again. I am listening to my queen. Arya kissed him before he could define which one. Morning delivered breakfast, 6 sealed letters, and 1 headache wearing ceremonial robes. Lord Veron Tress represented Avaloon's provisional council. He arrived before the tea cooled, accompanied by Sabine and enough legal documents to roof a cottage. Veron was not an enemy. He was worse for breakfast. He was a conscientious official with a passion for correct procedure. He bowed to Arya, bowed to Theron, and bowed to the royal blood record. Then he unfolded a list of consequences. Avaloon had possessed no monarchy for 20 years. After the coup leaders destroyed one another, regional councils had governed together with inconsistent success. Some citizens still wanted the old royal line restored. Others feared a return to inherited rule. Arya's marriage created another concern. If she claimed Avaloon's throne while married to Northreach's king, frightened people might assume the neighboring kingdom intended annexation. Theron set down his cup. I did not know who she was when I married her. Veron glanced at the wedding circlet still resting in Arya's hair. That is obvious from the timing. It may be less obvious to people who enjoy suspicion. Bram entered with more chairs. We have several of those here. I can recommend names. Arya stopped the beta before diplomacy became personal. She asked Veron what Avaloon required immediately. The answer was pleasantly small. Nothing. The Provisional Council wanted confirmation, a public statement, and time. Arya possessed a bloodline, not an automatic right to command a country that had changed during her absence. Relief came with unexpected gratitude. Nobody intended to put her on a horse and send her toward a second throne before lunch. I have only just learned how to be one queen, she admitted. The chair arrangements remained disputed. Theron nodded solemnly. We are drafting legislation. Veron looked between them. Sabine quietly advised him not to ask. The remaining letters concerned Malin. She had escaped through a service gate with the infant princess during the coup. Northreach opened its border to refugees 2 days later, but nobody knew the child was among them. Malin changed both their records and survived by sewing for travelers. The final explanation came from the pendant. Sabine pressed 2 points in the worn crest, releasing a hidden bronze back. A tiny folded note rested inside in Malin's familiar hand. The letter did not explain every year of silence. It offered one simple apology. Forgive the bitter tea, little star. It was never meant to harm your wolf. I needed her sent to sleep until nobody was searching for us. Arya read the sentence twice. The bedtime tea had ended when Malin died. By then, years of suppression during childhood had delayed Arya's wolf beyond its natural awakening. The wolf had finally surfaced at 27, then broken fully free during the blizzard 1 year later. That explanation required no villain and offered no cure. It did explain why a supposedly weak Omega carried enough power to stop a yard full of alphas. Sabine folded her hands. You were never an Omega. Your scent was hidden before anyone classified you. The old Avaloon records called women of Arya's line royal alphas. They were rare, powerful she-wolves, born with an instinctive ability to focus the attention of nearby wolves. The ability was not absolute control. Strong resistance could break it, and no command could permanently replace another person's will. An untrained royal alpha could still cause immediate reflexes with a careless word. Arya remembered every wolf in the graveyard freezing at her shout. How does one train this? Sabine's gaze moved toward the breakfast room door, preferably outside. They began in the West training yard after breakfast. 20 volunteers stood in 2 neat rows. They included guards, clerks, 3 senior wolves, and Bram. The beta had volunteered because Theron ordered him to, which he considered a poor demonstration of free will. Sabine placed Arya 10 paces from the group. Frost shone on the packed earth. Cold sunlight flashed against steel buckles and the bronze fittings on the weapon racks. Theron remained beside the wall. His alpha strength made him resistant to her royal pressure, but his presence comforted her wolf. That made him useful and potentially distracting. Sabine began with a harmless instruction. Ask Bram to sit. Arya looked at the beta. Please sit down. All 20 volunteers sat. One guard had been holding a mug. Tea flew upward and returned to his hat. Theron remained standing by the wall. His mouth became suspiciously firm. Bram removed himself from the frozen ground. The word please did not soften it. I noticed. Sabine instructed Arya to release the pressure before telling everyone to rise. Arya breathed, imagined drawing her presence back beneath her skin, and gave the second command. 19 volunteers stood. Bram stayed down. I am exercising choice, he informed them. The second attempt involved 1 clerk and a red ledger. Arya asked the clerk to bring it. 7 people rushed toward the table. 2 reached the ledger at once, collided shoulders, and presented it together with wounded dignity. The 8th volunteer brought a blue ledger because she disliked arriving empty-handed. Arya accepted both. We are learning? Bram brushed frost from his trousers. We are learning to label shelves farther apart. By noon, they established the shape of the problem. Arya's wolf did not understand degrees. It had spent its first year either trapped or fighting for control. Every request emerged with the force of an emergency. Worse, Theron's nearness changed its attention. Whenever Arya became tired, the wolf stopped caring about exercises and aimed her toward her husband. During the 4th trial, it turned a simple step into a full run. Theron caught her against his chest. 3 breaths, Arya insisted. Theron's arm remained secure around her waist. We are married. She gave him a look normally reserved for dishonest totals. Marriage did not enlarge your lungs. He looked disappointed by the medical ruling. Sabine recorded the incident. Her notes described it as a loss of directional focus. Bram leaned over her shoulder. We call it a royal landing. The keeper moved her notebook out of his reach. Training continued for 10 days. Arya learned to direct her pressure toward one person by using their scent and heartbeat as an anchor. She learned to release it immediately after a request. Most importantly, she learned to feel the instant before her wolf pushed power into her voice. Progress remained untidy. She once asked a kitchen servant to close a window. Every open window on the floor slammed shut at once. The draft stopped. 3 curtains fell, and Pell banned training near historical glass. She told a nervous council clerk to breathe. 12 officials inhaled together and created enough wind to move the agenda. During a stable exercise, she asked 1 horse handler to remain calm. The wolves obeyed. The horses did not care, and one stole Sabine's scarf. Theron attended whenever his duties allowed. His expression stayed solemn while his wolf radiated pride through the mate bond. Arya caught him smiling after the window incident. This is serious. Theron examined the fallen fabric with false concern. The curtains were defeated without injury. Arya pointed toward the official beneath the nearest one. One landed on the finance minister. The king's expression remained solemn. Public support may increase. She tried to glare, but affection weakened the result. Their marriage settled around the training in warm, inconvenient ways. Arya woke each morning with Theron's arm across her waist and her she-wolf utterly content. They shared breakfast, documents, and a continuing disagreement about which side of the bed belonged to whom. Theron claimed the side nearest the door so he could protect her. Arya claimed the same side because the window leaked on the other. They compromised by sleeping close enough that the distinction became theoretical. Flirting entered official business with increasing confidence. During one council session, Arya corrected a shipping total. Theron leaned toward her and murmured that intelligence was extremely attractive in a queen. She reminded him that the treasury minister could hear. The king glanced at the red-faced man. Then he has received useful guidance. Arya's wolf tried to place her in his lap. She kept control, but her chair scraped 6 inches closer. The entire council heard that too. The jokes disguised a real concern. Marriage had not weakened the wolf's dependence. The new pressure surrounding Arya's identity made it worse. Each unfamiliar Avaloon visitor sent the wolf searching for cedar and warmth. Each discussion of her dead parents tightened fear inside their shared body. Theron still calmed it faster than any breathing exercise. One afternoon, he left the training yard to receive a border message. Arya's wolf noticed before the door closed. Its distress flooded her limbs and broke her concentration. She called after him without meaning to use power. "Stay." The command struck the yard. Theron's hand stopped on the door latch. He could have resisted. Arya felt his alpha strength gather, then hold. He turned slowly, not because the command had mastered him, but because he had heard the fear beneath it. Everyone else froze in place. Bram had been tying his boot. He remained bent over with one foot on a bench. Sabine stood with her pen suspended above the page. Shame hit Arya harder than the power. "Release," the keeper managed. Arya dragged the pressure back. The yard moved again. Bram lowered his foot and announced that history had nearly preserved him in an undignified position. Theron crossed to Arya. Her wolf reached for him, desperate to erase what it had done. He stopped beyond touching distance. The refusal hurt, but his face held no anger. "Settle her first," he told Arya, "then decide whether you want me." Her breath shook. She named the frost, the wall, Sabine's stolen scarf, Bram's crooked boot, and the dark door. She felt her wedding ring, the ground beneath her feet, and her own heartbeat. The wolf pushed toward Theron again. Arya stayed where she was. "He was leaving a room," she whispered inwardly, "not abandoning us in snow." The panic loosened slowly. Only then did Theron open his arms. Arya crossed the space herself. He held her without counting. That evening, she found him in their sitting room with the altered emergency contact procedure. Bram had added a clause in very dark ink. "The king may leave a room without causing a constitutional crisis." Arya took the paper. He enjoyed writing this. He requested witnesses. She sat beside Theron on the sofa rather than on him. Her wolf considered this an insult to marriage. The king waited until she spoke. "I commanded you." Theron turned the amended procedure over in his hands. "You startled me. You did not control me." Arya shook her head. "That distinction does not make it acceptable." Theron agreed. His honesty hurt less than reassurance would have. They decided he would no longer serve as the first anchor during training. Arya would practice with him outside the yard and beyond immediate reach. If she asked him to stay through royal pressure, he would leave briefly and return at an agreed time. The wolf needed evidence that distance ended safely. It disliked the plan so strongly that it made Arya fold her arms. Theron recognized the movement. "Is that you?" "No." "She wishes to file an objection." "Denied." The wolf made Arya's lower lip push forward. Theron stared at it with dangerous tenderness. "That is unfair." Arya covered her mouth. "Do not reward manipulation." He kissed her fingers instead, which helped nobody. The new training was difficult and unexpectedly funny. Theron began 10 feet away. Arya practiced letting him cross a doorway. He returned after 10 seconds, carrying a flower from the corridor vase. The next attempt lasted 30 seconds. He returned with 2 biscuits. By 5 minutes, he came back with a chair, a book, and an explanation that a king should remain productive while being repeatedly dismissed by his wife. Arya's wolf began associating his departures with gifts. Sabine ordered him to stop improving the wrong behavior. He returned empty-handed after 10 minutes. The wolf was offended, but Arya remained calm. After 20 minutes, she finished an exercise before looking at the door. Theron came back exactly when promised. The wolf learned something small and vital. He could leave and still return. Safety did not vanish when Cedar moved beyond the wall. Arya learned it too. Meanwhile, Avaloon's council prepared its public confirmation. Veron requested that Arya appear before visiting representatives and answer questions about her intentions. The gathering took place in Northreach's council hall. It was not a trial, although the number of documents suggested someone hoped it might become one. Veron began by reading Arya's full verified lineage. It took long enough for Theron to finish half a report. Princess Ariella Mevin Vaughn, last surviving child of King Edric Vaughn and Queen Lysandra Vaughn, Royal Alpha of the Avaloon line, presently Alpha Queen Arya Caldane of Northreach. Bram stood behind the royal chairs. The Cole title would have improved it. Arya ignored him with royal skill. Representatives asked whether Theron intended to claim Avaloon through marriage. The question carried no accusation, only reasonable caution. Theron answered without consulting Arya because the ambition was his to deny. He renounced any personal claim to Avaloon's land, crown, treasury, and laws. Northreach would recognize whatever civil decision Avaloon made about its former royal line. Then he placed the sealed marriage proposal on the table. Its date proved he had asked Arya before discovering her birth. "I married a woman who could repair a relief budget and ruin a royal coat with gravy," he told the room. The Second Kingdom was not included in negotiations. Laughter eased the formal air. Arya's chest tightened for a better reason. Veron turned to her. He wanted to know whether she intended to demand immediate restoration. She looked at the Avaloon representatives. They were not subjects waiting for an inherited order. They were people who had built councils, repaired towns, and raised families during 27 years without her. "I will not claim authority over a country I have never served," Arya answered. "I will learn its needs before I decide what role I can honestly accept." The words belonged to her. Her royal alpha pressure remained quiet. Nobody was forced to listen. They listened anyway. The representatives agreed to recognize her identity while postponing any decision about the crown. She would retain her Northreach title and join future Avaloon discussions as the surviving princess, not its automatic ruler. Veron looked relieved enough to forgive the absence of a 30-page declaration. After the chamber emptied, Theron caught Arya around the waist and pulled her against him. Her wolf had not pushed. "That was not her," Arya observed. Theron drew her closer with deliberate satisfaction. "I know." She rested one hand against his chest. "The procedure does not cover kings attacking queens." His mouth brushed her temple. "A dangerous gap in the law." She turned in his arms. "How many breaths?" "A reign's worth." Arya kissed him before royal arithmetic became excessive. Sabine requested one more official act before the Avaloon delegation returned home. Their archive needed a current portrait of the surviving princess. The only existing image showed an infant glaring at a painter, which offered limited help to future historians. The portrait artist arrived with a carved chair, a painted backdrop, and several opinions about royal elbows. He wanted Arya in white silk beside an imitation Avaloon throne. She selected her dark green work dress instead. She wore Malin's bronze pendant and placed one relief ledger on the table beside her. "A princess should hold a flower," the artist objected. Arya rested one hand on the ledger. "This fed 3 villages. The flowers have been decorative all morning." The flowers lost their position. Theron watched from near the window. He claimed to be reviewing correspondence, although the same page remained open for 40 minutes. Arya's wolf knew exactly where he stood. The carved chair began moving toward him. The artist paused after every few brushstrokes to drag it back onto the chalk mark. By the fourth correction, sweat gathered beneath his formal cap. Your Majesty, the light is arranged for the center. Tell the chair, Arya advised. Bram crouched beside the floor and examined the legs. No structural fault. Romantic interference remains likely. Theron lowered his document. Should I stand nearer? No. Arya and the artist answered together. Her wolf disagreed alone. Sabine suggested using the sitting as another separation exercise. Theron left the room and promised to return after 20 minutes. The chair stopped moving. Arya expected the wolf to panic. Instead, it listened to his fading steps, remembered every successful return, and allowed her to stay beneath the arranged light. The artist worked quickly. At 19 minutes, the door opened. Theron returned carrying nothing. Arya's wolf greeted him with pleased warmth rather than a stolen limb. She finished the sitting before crossing the room. The final portrait did not resemble Avaloon's dead queens. Arya sat without a crown, dressed as the practical woman Malin had raised. The pendant acknowledged her birth, while the ledger represented everything she had chosen afterward. One small detail escaped the artist's control. Arya's chair stood 3 inches left of the chalk mark. Theron noticed when the canvas was unveiled. Historical accuracy. The artist surrendered without argument. Sabine packed the portrait for Avaloon. She promised the archive would preserve Arya as she was, not as frightened royalists wished her to be. That decision gave the princess a place in history without forcing the queen into another person's shape. The second cold front arrived 3 days early. Wind struck the castle before dawn and rattled every eastern window. Snow rolled over the battlements in long white sheets. By breakfast, the city bells had begun warning travelers away from the upper roads. Arya was already in the records room. Winter did not respect royal revelations. Coal still required counting, medicine still required dry wagons, and a princess remained perfectly capable of finding a missing cart. She found 12. An Avaloon relief convoy had crossed the eastern border the previous afternoon. It carried fever medicine, lamp oil, and coal for 3 isolated villages. The convoy should have reached Pine Hollow before nightfall. It had not arrived. Theron entered while Arya was spreading route maps across the table. He wore riding clothes beneath his winter coat. Bram followed with one boot properly fastened and the other open. A message came from Pine Hollow, the king explained. The old pass collapsed behind the convoy. Arya traced the road with one finger. The main route crossed a steep shelf above abandoned drainage tunnels. A smaller service road circled east, but deep snow made it useless for loaded carts. How many people? 31 travelers, Theron answered. Possibly more if they collected villagers along the road. Her she-wolf stirred at the danger. It wanted Theron close before anything else happened. Arya kept her voice even. We need the old mine plans. Pell brought them within minutes. He also brought a complaint about wet gloves touching archive paper. Nobody had touched the paper yet, but he believed prevention began with suspicion. The plans showed a drainage tunnel beneath the collapsed shelf. It connected an abandoned watch station to Pine Hollow's lower valley. The opening was too narrow for a cart, but people could crawl through if the ice had not sealed it. Theron ordered a rescue party. Arya prepared to join. He opened his mouth. She raised one finger. I know the cargo, the tunnel measures, and the Avaloon marks on the old plans. Theron closed his mouth, reconsidered, and tried a different argument. The weather is dangerous. That is why you are going. Bram finished tying his boot. I admire a marriage where both parties lose the same argument. Sabine insisted on accompanying them as far as Pine Hollow. The old keeper knew the Avaloon convoy leader and could identify the sealed medicine cases. Veron remained at the castle to coordinate messages with both councils. They departed in 2 covered sledges with healers, ropes, blankets, and enough hot broth to drown a cautious official. Snow hissed beneath the runners. Horses breathed white clouds into the morning. Pine branches bent under ice and snapped in the forest with sounds like distant bones. Arya sat opposite Theron in the first sledge. Their knees touched whenever the runners struck a rut. Her wolf wanted more. It sent an image of Arya moving to his side. "We are already touching," she whispered beneath the wind. The wolf considered knees inadequate. Theron felt the exchange through the bond. "Would she prefer my lap?" "Do not negotiate with the passenger." Theron glanced toward the place beside him. "She is also my wife." Arya braced one boot against the floor as the sledge tilted. She has no respect for road safety. The sledge hit another rut. Arya slid halfway across the bench and landed against him. Theron's arm came around her shoulders. "The road has voted." Bram drove from the front. "The road requests better maintenance." Arya remained beside her husband until Pine Hollow came into view. This time, closeness was practical and chosen. Her wolf accepted the compromise with insulting smugness. The village occupied a narrow basin below the pass. Smoke pressed low over 30 stone roofs. Residents had gathered in the meeting house, where wet wool, onion soup, and fear thickened the warm air. The head woman attempted to kneel when Arya entered. The ceiling beam stopped her halfway. She struck her forehead and sat down on a bench instead. Arya immediately banned kneeling in buildings under 7 feet high. Bram added the rule to his emergency document. He had begun carrying it inside his coat for moments when monarchy encountered architecture. The latest information made the rescue harder. The convoy had collected 14 road workers before the collapse. 45 people were now missing. One boy had reached the village on foot before the snow deepened. He reported that the convoy sheltered near the old watch station. 2 travelers were injured, and the coal carts blocked the only protected hollow. The temperature would fall sharply after sunset. Theron divided the rescue party. Sabine remained with the village healers and prepared the meeting house. Bram took 6 wolves toward the lower drainage outlet. Theron and Arya led the upper team toward the watch station. They reached the collapsed shelf near midday. Snow covered the road beneath a smooth white slope. The tops of 2 carts protruded near the far side. Voices carried faintly through the wind. The trapped convoy was alive. Relief lasted until the mountain made a deep, cracking sound. Everyone looked up. "That is not a friendly noise," Bram observed. The slope answered by shedding a curtain of powder onto his head. Only his nose remained visible. Arya pulled him free while Theron examined the ridge. The small slide had not harmed anyone, but the upper snow remained unstable. A large group crossing the shelf could trigger another collapse. They needed the drainage tunnel. Bram's team found the lower entrance beneath ice and thorn brush. The opening was barely 4 feet high and less than 3 feet wide. A human could crawl through, while a shifted wolf could squeeze forward faster and detect weak air pockets. Arya felt every face turn toward her. Her previous wolf form had been unstable, frightened, and nearly frozen. She had not completed a controlled full shift since the blizzard. Theron stepped beside her. "You do not have to prove anything. This is not proof. It is a route." She meant it. The distinction steadied her. They made a small shelter between 2 sledges. The other wolves turned away while Arya removed her wedding circlet, boots, and winter clothing. She wrapped herself in a heavy blanket until the shift began. Pain moved through her muscles, but fear made it worse. Her she-wolf surged toward control, delighted by freedom and terrified of losing Theron. Black-brown fur covered Arya's arms. Her hands changed into broad paws against the blanket. Then Theron moved outside the shelter to check the tunnel. The wolf panicked. The shift broke halfway. Arya fell against the sledge, trapped between forms and gasping. Power rolled from her in a sharp wave. Every nearby wolf dropped to one knee. Bram had just climbed onto a supply crate. He dropped into a sitting position and crushed a bag of turnips. The vegetables escaped across the snow. Theron returned at once, but stopped beyond the shelter opening. Arya's wolf clawed toward him inside her mind. Warm, safe, need him. Arya wanted the same comfort. She also saw 45 people waiting beyond the mountain. "Stay where you are," she told Theron. His jaw tightened, but he obeyed. She drew the blanket around her changing body and pressed one shifting hand against her chest. The heartbeat raced beneath skin and fur. "Listen to us," she told the wolf. "He is close, but this heart is keeping us alive." The animal resisted. It filled Arya with the old memory of snow, fever, and Theron's arms. Arya did not reject the memory. "He was our shelter then. I am your shelter now." For the first time, she did not command the wolf or fight it. She offered partnership. "You give me strength, I give us direction." The panic paused. Arya felt the wolf examine her heartbeat as if hearing it for the first time. Then it accepted. The shift completed in one clean movement. An enormous dark she-wolf rose from the blanket. Her fur carried deep brown beneath the winter light. Gold shone through her green eyes and power settled around her without exploding outward. Nobody fell, sat, or damaged any remaining vegetables. Bram gathered turnips into his coat. Controlled transformation confirmed. Agricultural losses remain under review. Arya's wolf looked toward Theron. It wanted to run to him. Arya asked it to wait. The wolf stayed beside the tunnel. Theron approached only after she lowered her head in permission. He placed one gloved hand against her cheek. Pride and love crossed the bond, warm but no longer necessary for survival. "Come back to me," he murmured. Arya pressed her nose briefly to his wrist. Then she entered the mountain alone. The drainage tunnel smelled of frozen earth, old iron, and water trapped beneath stone. Arya's shoulders nearly touched both walls. Ice cracked under her paws, and darkness swallowed the entrance after 3 turns. Her wolf saw little, but it heard everything. Water ticked somewhere ahead. Mice moved behind rotten support boards. Far above, the mountain carried the groan of snow settling over rock. Theron's heartbeat faded behind her. The wolf looked back. Arya kept them moving. They found the first blockage 50 yards inside. Frozen branches and gravel filled half the passage. A human would have needed tools. The Royal Alpha she-wolf lowered one shoulder and pushed. The branches resisted. She pushed harder. The entire pile slid forward and covered her nose in black mud. Her wolf sneezed 4 times. The sound echoed through the tunnel with decreasing dignity. Arya sensed Theron's amusement through the bond from outside. Apparently, their connection carried sneezing, but not useful directions. She cleared the opening and continued. The tunnel rose toward a narrow grate beneath the old watch station. Voices reached her through the iron bars. Someone coughed. A child was crying, not from injury, but from hunger and exhaustion. Arya hooked one paw beneath the rusted grate. It did not move. She tried again with Royal Alpha strength. The grate flew upward, struck a stack of empty buckets, and announced her arrival to every trapped traveler. Metal clattered across the watch station floor. Silence followed. Arya climbed through the opening with mud on her muzzle and a bucket resting between her ears. 45 people stared at her. The convoy leader recognized the gold in her eyes and attempted to kneel. The watch station ceiling was lower than Pine Hollow's meeting house. His head struck a beam. 2 others tried to follow him and collided with his back. Arya removed the bucket with one paw and released a careful thread of royal pressure. "Stay upright." The instruction carried without becoming a spoken command. Everyone stopped bending. The convoy leader rubbed his head. "Your Highness?" Arya could not answer in human words. She pointed her nose toward the open grate. "Her Highness wants us in the hole," an injured road worker guessed. It was not the phrasing Arya would have chosen, but it moved the rescue forward. The watch station had survived the slide. The hollow outside had not. Snow buried the carts to their axles, and one coal wagon leaned against the wall. Medicine remained dry beneath waxed covers. 3 people had injuries serious enough to prevent crawling. Everyone else could use the tunnel. Arya inspected the old hand sleds hanging beside the station hearth. They were narrow enough for the drainage passage. The medicine cases could ride with the injured. She nudged the convoy leader toward the sleds, then scratched 3 lines into the dusty floor. He misunderstood and brought 3 spoons. Arya pushed the spoons away. He returned with a broom. Her wolf considered using royal pressure to improve human intelligence. Arya refused. She bit the rope on one sled and dragged it toward the grate. Understanding finally arrived. The leader organized the loading while Arya examined the buried road. Wind had polished the collapsed slope into a white wall. Theron's upper team remained beyond it. Through the mate bond, she felt him moving along the ridge. Then the mountain cracked again. The sound was deeper than before. Arya threw her royal pressure across the watch station. Down. This time, she aimed it carefully at the people beneath the windows. They dropped behind the stone wall 1 heartbeat before snow struck the building. Glass broke. White powder blasted through the shutters and extinguished the fire. The station shook, but remained standing. Outside, the upper slope disappeared. The mate bond went silent. Arya's wolf lost all awareness of Theron's heartbeat and scent. Terror tore through their shared body. It drove them toward the buried door, claws scraping stone. Find him. Find him now. Arya wanted to obey. Every human part of her imagined Theron beneath the snow. Behind her, 45 people waited in darkness. 3 could not walk. A child had begun crying again. The royal alpha power swelled with panic. If released carelessly, it would send everyone running into the blocked passage at once. Arya pressed one paw against her chest. The heartbeat beneath fur belonged to both of them. We love him, she told the wolf inside their mind. We are still not helpless without him. The wolf fought her with the lodge memory. Theron's warmth, cedar scent, and arms returned in perfect detail. Arya accepted every image. He had saved them. That did not mean survival had remained in his hands forever. We get these people out, she promised. Then we find our husband together. The wolf listened. Arya offered one more bargain. 7 breaths when they reached him. The wolf demanded 10. 8, Arya decided, because emergencies encouraged poor negotiation. The panic settled into purpose. Arya turned back to the convoy. She focused her pressure on the leader alone and pointed toward the grate. He understood at once. The first group entered the tunnel with ropes around their waists. An injured woman followed on a hand sled with 2 medicine cases tied beside her. Arya moved between the watch station and the narrow passage, keeping each group calm. She did not command obedience. She used brief pulses to focus frightened minds, then released them. Look here. Move now. Wait. Every instruction had an edge and an end. Nobody lost choice. Nobody froze after the need passed. The final travelers entered the tunnel as snow pressed against the station door. Arya followed the last sled, backing through the grate while the convoy leader held the rope. The mud greeted her nose again. She sneezed. The leader, perhaps believing this was a royal signal, ordered everyone to stop. Arya sneezed twice more. The entire rescue line stopped twice. She finally put her muzzle beneath his hand and pushed him forward. The man nodded with grave understanding. 3 sneezes means continue. Arya decided not to restore a monarchy that day. Halfway through the tunnel, a side passage carried fresh snow scent from above. It had not been open on Pell's plan. The second slide must have broken through an old ventilation shaft. Arya heard a faint scrape beyond it. Then came one slow heartbeat she knew better than her own. Theron. Her wolf surged toward the side passage. Arya kept enough control to send the convoy onward first. At the lower entrance, Bram received each traveler and directed them toward waiting sledges. He counted 45 people, 3 injured, and all medicine cases. The coal remained buried, but people and medicine mattered more. The Beta also reported that the upper rescue team had reached the lower trail. Only Theron and 1 guard remained missing after the second slide. When the final road worker emerged, Bram looked behind him. Where is the queen? The convoy leader pointed into the dark. 3 sneezes, then she left. Bram stared at him. I regret asking. Arya dug through the ventilation passage. Stones scraped her shoulders, snow packed between her claws. The heartbeat beyond the blockage remained slow but steady. Her wolf wanted to blast the stones aside with every ounce of strength. Arya felt the danger in that impulse. Too much force could collapse the pocket around Theron. Together, they controlled it. One stone, release. One timber, release. The opening widened a foot at a time. Cold air entered from the other side. Arya pushed through and found a hollow beneath two fallen pines. Theron lay in human form beside an injured guard. He had used his body and alpha strength to hold a timber away from the man's leg. Snow covered his hair and shoulders. Blood darkened one sleeve, but his eyes were open. Relief struck Arya so hard that her wolf forgot every agreement. It launched their enormous body at him. Theron released the timber and rolled aside just before 300 pounds of joyful she-wolf landed where his chest had been. Arya skidded through the snow and stopped against a pine. He stared at her. "My catching technique has limits." She shook snow from her ears with deep offense. The injured guard laughed once, then apologized to both monarchs. Arya returned at a walk. Theron placed both hands against her broad face. The bond opened between them, carrying his pain, pride, and enormous relief. "You came back to me," he whispered. Arya's wolf pressed its forehead against his. 8 breaths. On the 9th, Arya pulled away by choice. Theron noticed. His smile was tired and brilliant. Together they freed the guard's leg. Arya controlled her strength while Theron lifted the timber. Then she guided both men through the ventilation passage. They emerged from the lower tunnel near sunset. Pine Hollow erupted in cheers. Arya had mud across her muzzle, ice along her belly, and one crushed turnip stuck behind her front leg. She looked nothing like the portraits of Avaloon's elegant queens. Sabine bowed anyway. This time, the old keeper's gesture carried gratitude rather than ceremony. Arya shifted behind the covered sledge while everyone turned away. The process remained controlled. Theron waited nearby with the same heavy blanket they had packed for the injured. When she returned to human form, he wrapped the wool around her before she could feel the wind. The gesture brought back the hunting lodge. Her wolf leaned toward him, but it did not seize her limbs. Arya stepped into his arms herself. 8 breaths? Theron asked. "We already used them." He looked disappointed. "I was unconscious for the official count." "You were speaking." "Then I was medically unreliable." She kissed his cold cheek and granted an appeal. Bram approached with the crushed turnip. "Does this belong to either royal household?" Arya took it from him. "Put it in the loss report." The beta looked toward the rescued convoy. Under agriculture, avalanche, or uncontrolled affection? Theron answered first. Royal transport damage. They returned to Pine Hollow beneath a violet evening sky. The village meeting house glowed with firelight. Soup steamed in iron pots, carrying onion and pepper through the wet crowd. Nobody knelt indoors. Arya considered that her first successful law. The meeting house became a crowded infirmary for the night. Healers treated frostbite near the hearth. Villagers passed bowls of soup over bedrolls, while rescued travelers described the tunnel with increasing creativity. By the third account, Arya had torn iron bars apart with one paw and commanded the mountain to apologize. Bram corrected the story. The mountain has submitted no written apology. The child from the convoy insisted Arya had worn a bucket as a crown. That detail was accurate enough to survive official review. Theron sat on a bench while a healer wrapped his injured arm. The cut was shallow, but the healer used enough linen to bandage a tree. Arya approached in borrowed trousers, a wool tunic, and the blanket around her shoulders. Her wolf wanted to inspect every inch of him. She asked permission first. Theron opened his good arm. "Medical inspection is welcome." Arya sat beside him and checked the bandage. "You are enjoying this. My queen has placed both hands on my chest. Recovery is promising." The healer tightened the final knot with unnecessary force. Theron's smile became briefly heroic. Across the room, Sabine spoke with the Avaloon convoy leader. The keeper returned carrying his written account of the rescue. He says you could have forced everyone through the tunnel, she told Arya. You did not. Arya remembered controlling each pulse and ending it when the danger passed. The achievement mattered more than the size of her wolf. Power should stop when the need stops. Sabine nodded. Avaloon has been waiting 27 years to hear a royal descendant understand that. The words did not place a crown on Arya's head. They gave her a reason to keep learning. Everyone slept badly and woke hungry. The storm cleared before noon. Rescue teams recovered the coal carts the following day, although one axle had cracked. The medicine reached all 3 villages before the fever spread. Arya returned to Northreach Castle, exhausted enough to sleep for 14 hours. Royal Alpha power had a cost. Her muscles ached, her voice remained rough, and her wolf wanted food in quantities normally associated with banquets. She ate breakfast twice. Theron brought a 3rd tray to their room. This is irresponsible, Arya informed him while accepting another honey roll. Theron placed the tray within easy reach. You moved part of a mountain. She broke the roll in half. I moved several stones. His gaze shifted toward the empty plates. The kitchen prefers my version. Her wolf preferred the honey roll and briefly forgot to demand his lap. That concerned Theron more than the avalanche. Within a week, the rescue account reached both kingdoms. It spread through official messengers, village letters, and one song that rhymed princess with turnip business. Arya prohibited the song at council. Theron requested a private performance. Bram knew all 6 verses. Political consequences arrived without an army. Avaloon's Provisional Council formally recognized Arya as its surviving princess and royal alpha. It invited her to participate in rebuilding discussions, but postponed any decision about restoring the monarchy. The arrangement suited her. She kept the name Arya. Ariella remained in the historical record, belonging to the infant her parents had known. Arya belonged to Malin, warehouse dust, repaired roofs, and the woman she had become. The decision became urgent when Northreach's herald attempted her revised introduction before a formal supper. He began with Alpha Queen Ariella Maven von Kaldane, surviving Princess of Avaloon and Royal Alpha of the ancient line. By the time he reached Northreach's winter offices, the first guests had already entered the dining room. Arya remained in the corridor because she had not recognized the person being announced. The herald finished, drew a desperate breath, and looked around for his missing queen. Try Arya Kaldane, she suggested. Varen objected from behind a stack of ceremonial notes. That omits historical information. History may be printed on the program. Theron offered his arm. I usually call her my wife. Her wolf approved so strongly that Arya's hand attached itself to his sleeve. The herald watched the royal couple enter together. At the next door, he announced only the Alpha King and Queen of Northreach. Everyone identified them successfully. Varen required 3 documents to express this distinction. Arya required 1 sentence. She signed his documents because marriage had taught her that affection sometimes meant tolerating other people's paperwork. Her work changed but did not disappear. She remained Northreach's Alpha Queen and continued overseeing winter relief. She also joined a small Avaloon rebuilding council as a representative, not a ruler. No territory changed hands. No crown crossed the border. Theron maintained his written renunciation of any Avaloon claim. The most visible change involved chairs. Every council room now contained 1 extra seat beside the king. The staff believed this accommodated the queen. Arya knew it accommodated her wolf's opinions about distance. She did not always use it. Training continued after the storm. Arya practiced shifting until she could complete the change without fear or damaged furniture. Sabine taught her to narrow royal pressure to 1 willing partner. Bram taught everyone to secure nearby turnips. The first controlled group exercise ended without anyone sitting, running, or wearing tea. Arya asked 5 volunteers to look toward her, held their attention for 2 breaths, and released them together. Each person could have resisted. None felt trapped afterward. Sabine marked the result as satisfactory. Bram marked it as disappointingly uneventful. Arya preferred his version. Uneventful power was exactly what she wanted to possess. Theron continued leaving rooms at agreed times. The wolf stopped treating each departure as disaster. It still noticed. It still preferred him close. Dependence did not vanish in a single heroic afternoon. It became manageable because Arya no longer mistook healing for never feeling afraid. 1 month after the rescue, Theron spent a night inspecting the northern pass. Arya refused his offer to postpone. That evening, her wolf searched the corridors for Cedar, but Arya calmed it with her own heartbeat. "He will return tomorrow," she reminded them. "Until then, we have each other." The wolf settled without a glove, cloak, or stolen cup. When Theron returned, it offered Arya the urge to run and waited for permission. They crossed the courtyard together. He caught his wife around the waist and turned beneath the falling snow. "How many breaths?" he asked. Arya kissed the cold corner of his mouth. "As many as we choose." The final Avaloon meeting took place at Northreach Castle in early spring. Meltwater sang through the courtyard drains, and the council windows stood open to air scented with wet earth. Arya entered carrying 3 relief ledgers. The scene resembled the morning when Gravy had conquered Theron's sleeve. Every official noticed. The kitchen had learned its lesson and provided covered cups. Theron sat at the head of the table. He sensed her wolf brighten as she approached. His hand moved away from the report, ready to catch her. Arya walked past him. The king looked almost offended. She placed the ledgers in front of Veron and explained the first joint rebuilding plan. Northreach would provide timber. Avaloon would reopen its mountain clinic and repair the drainage route that had saved the convoy. The representatives approved the agreement without royal pressure. Veron signed first. Theron signed for Northreach. Arya added her name as queen, princess, and relief representative. Bram had left enough room for the Cole title. She crossed it out. The meeting ended before noon. Chairs moved, papers closed, and officials filed toward the doors. Theron remained seated. "You passed me without incident." Arya gathered the signed agreement. "You sound disappointed. I prepared an excellent catch." Her wolf wanted to reward him. It offered the impulse politely. Arya considered it. Then she set the agreement on the table, turned, and sat sideways across her husband's lap. Theron's arms closed around her. Was that her? No. Arya kissed him slowly while the last ministers hurried out with renewed respect for closed doors. When she lifted her head, his amber eyes had lost every trace of royal severity. "That one was me," she whispered. She would like the next turn. Theron smiled against her mouth. "I married a generous woman." Behind them, Bram picked up the old emergency contact procedure. He crossed out the title and wrote, "Voluntary Royal Contact." Then he added one final rule. The king is still expected to catch his queen. Thank you for listening to Moonlit Romance Tales. I hope this story brought you a little laughter, warmth, and a peaceful moment in a world that can sometimes feel heavy. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, subscribe, and share it to spread more happiness. I'll see you in the next one.